last week have led to significant fire growth in many areas of the province. As of this morning, there are approximately 550 people under evacuation order and another 5,000 under evacuation alert. Fortunately, that is down from 7,000 people from just yesterday, as the evacuation alert in Williams Lake has been lifted now that the River Valley wildfire is under control. Right now, most of the evacuations are due to the Antler Creek wildfire, the Shetland Creek wildfire, and the Alwyn Creek wildfire. I want to assure everyone in British Columbia that the province is here to support you. Wildfire Service and emergency management personnel are working tirelessly and around the clock to keep you and your communities safe. On Monday evening, the entire town of Jasper and Jasper National Park in Alberta was evacuated with very little notice. The only safe route for evacuees was to travel west along Highway 16 into British Columbia. Alberta has directed evacuees to 3 emergency reception centres, one in Grand Prairie, one in Calgary, and another in Edmonton. Our government has been working closely with Alberta to support their evacuees and the response effort, and we continue to assist them in any way that we can. I want to recognize the generosity of British Columbians. Communities along the evacuation route have stepped up for our neighbours and friends from Alberta in a major way. They assisted them through their journey during harrowing times, from Valemont and McBride and Prince George to Clearwater, Barrier, and Kamloops. People, community leaders, and businesses have been pulling together to lend their support. Local businesses came together and worked hard to support evacuees, like Valemont Pines Golf and RV Park, who opened up their campground to over 600 people free of charge when their capacity is usually 100. And the Clearwater Tim Hortons crew, who started extra early to be able to serve fresh coffee to evacuees. Communities ensured that rest stops and welcome centers were available. People opened their hearts and their homes to evacuees that needed support. And I also want to thank the highway crews for patrolling the highway with jerry cans to make sure that no one was stranded. We've been here before. When people are in need, whether they are our friends, our loved ones, our neighbors, or complete strangers, British Columbians come together and they step up in a big way. It is part of who we are, and I sincerely thank everyone who has assisted these efforts. Here in British Columbia, our wildfire situation is rapidly evolving, and we may see more evacuation alerts and more evacuation orders in the days ahead. Right now, we are asking everyone to take steps to be prepared, and that means having your grab-and-go kit ready for your household. Have it packed and ready by your door. In your grab-and-go bag, it is important to include your emergency plan, copies of important documents, supplies for your pets, and cherished mementos. To learn more about how to create an emergency plan, please visit preparedbc.ca/emergency-ready. If you have friends or family that live in areas prone to wildfire, now is the time to reach out and offer your support. Being under an evacuation alert or an evacuation order can be incredibly stressful. It is important that we are there for each other during times of crisis and that we prepare now for those times. If you are placed under an evacuation order, you must leave immediately. Follow all directions from local officials and evacuate using the routes that are identified in the evacuation order. All evacuation orders are also amplified on emergencyinfobc.ca. When you are safe and outside of the evacuation order, when you are safe and outside of the evacuation order area, call your insurance provider to understand how they will cover living expenses while you are under an order. If you don't have insurance, you can register for emergency support services. Emergency support services are available for anyone who needs help meeting basic needs such as accommodation, food, clothing, and incidentals during an evacuation order. And you can save time by pre-registering for emergency support services online at ess.gov.bc.ca. People can be connected to supports by visiting a reception center in a host community. Information on the location of reception centers for your evacuation will be included in your evacuation order. In addition, people who have been evacuated from communities in the Regional District of Central Kootenay, Thompson-Nicola Regional District, District of Wells, and the Caribou Regional District also have the option of receiving self-service supports online at ess.gov.bc.ca. People who have been evacuated and created an emergency support services profile with the BC Services Card app can access these supports that they need via Interact e-transfer. And if people need help getting support, they can call the BC Evacuee Helpline at 1-800-387-4258. For those who are traveling to and throughout our beautiful province, I encourage you to continue to do so safely. British Columbia is vast and many communities are looking forward to receiving you. All we ask is that you know before you go. Check emergencyinfobc.ca for the latest information on emergencies and drivebc.ca for the latest highway traffic and closure information. Tune in to your local radio and keep up to date with your trusted news sources. Things can change quickly, and so we do need all travelers to pay attention. Lastly, I want to thank all of the emergency personnel, community leaders, business leaders, BC Wildfire Service, firefighters, and staff for doing everything in their power to protect people and communities and to help care for their neighbors. I'll now turn it over to Minister Ralston to provide a more fulsome wildfire update.
Thanks very much. Good morning. I'm Bruce Ralston, Minister of Forests, and I'm responsible for the BC Wildfire Service. I'm also want to acknowledge I'm speaking from the traditional territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. So let me begin. Over the past 2 weeks, parts of BC have seen record-breaking high temperatures. And despite some welcome rain in June, drought remains a serious issue for much of the province. Recent summer storms have added lightning to this mix, and we are seeing a sudden increase in the number of wildfires as a result. And wildfires are frequently started by lightning strikes. And by lightning, I mean there have been more than 70,000 lightning strikes in the last 3 days. An extraordinarily high number. I did ask, and you could probably ask if you wished, how that number is calculated, because there is a scientific method for doing so. The immediate weather forecast will continue to create challenging wildfire conditions. We're expecting high winds and thunderstorms that can increase the size of the fires as well as leading to new fire starts. In the days ahead, though, there's some relief coming to parts of the province. The heat should lessen, and we'll see much needed rain in the north, and there are actually some rainfall warnings in some areas. However, everywhere south of Prince George, in the center of the province, will remain hot and dry. As of 9:30 this morning, there are 430 wildfires burning across the province, with over 112 starts just in the last 24 hours. The BC Wildfire Service responds vigorously to wildfire throughout the province. With those of the new starts of fires this week, almost 70% are listed and they have a classification system under control, being held, or out. All of that is good. A huge thank you to our crews on the ground and in the air 24/7 for their efforts to get that result. With 140 air tanker missions have been flown in the last week, with 30 of those yesterday, the most so far this year. Initial attack crews have been getting fires out before they grow. Heavy equipment and structure protection crews have been working to keep homes and businesses safe wherever they are threatened. Over 1,000 BC Wildfire Service personnel and local contractors are engaged in the firefighting effort. Building on our work together through the Premier's task force, community support and participation has already become a theme of this year's fire season. No doubt there will be challenges ahead, but we're seeing concerted, strengthened collaboration efforts between local governments, First Nations, local fire departments, and the BC Wildfire Service in many parts of the province. Also, we are grateful to have support from Australia, New Zealand, and the Canadian provinces and territories of Nova Scotia, Ontario, Alaska, that's not really a Canadian province yet, and the Yukon. This week, 5 20-person crews from Ontario arrived. Additionally, 9 3-person initial attack crews are also on their way from the Yukon. In these challenging conditions, we are very, very grateful for their support. As we face storms, wind, lightning, and drought, it is clear climate change is arriving faster than predicted, and we must keep taking action to keep people safe. Following last year's record wildfire season, the Premier convened an expert task force to make recommendations in real time, unlike a Royal Commission where you might go away and come back with recommendations in several years. These were recommendations that were actionable and implemented right away for this season. While we always have more to do, I know that this work is making a difference right now. We enhanced training and recruitment to make sure our crews were ready right out of the gate when we had severe fires in May. We secured more helicopter, plane, and equipment contracts early in the season. We're using more of the latest predictive technology, and we've strengthened the partnerships and work we're doing together with communities on the ground. A major focus of the task force was building capacity and collaboration between neighbors, first responders, and agencies. We're seeing this in real time on the River Valley wildfire in Williams Lake, where wildland firefighters from the BC Wildfire Service and local crews from the Williams Lake Fire Department responded immediately and have worked together, hand in hand, to keep people, homes, and businesses safe. Similar collaboration, working together, is happening in communities across the province. So I want to thank everyone who's stepping up to help. It is vital that we all take the necessary steps to remain prepared for wildfire and that we continue to do our part to prevent human-caused wildfires. And if you haven't already, now is the time to familiarize yourself with the Fire Smart last-minute wildfire checklist. While it doesn't replace actions that can be taken in advance, it's useful to have on hand at this time of year. Please pay attention and follow the fire bans in your region. And a reminder that open campfires are prohibited everywhere in the province except Haida Gwaii. You can find out more information about prohibitions, evacuations, driving conditions, and the current wildfire situation on the BC Wildfire Service website or the app, which is very convenient to put on your phone. As we see more wildfire in the southern half of the province, I'm urging everyone to continue to report wildfires using the app, the wildfire app, or by calling star 5555 from a cell phone. Now, summer is the time when people take time off. They want to explore, and rightly so, the outdoors in our province, including our magnificent lakes and rivers. We are asking everyone to be aware that wildfire aircraft may be present in your area and to remind recreational boaters to please keep boats away from areas where planes and helicopters are operating. This reminder also applies to non-firefighting aircraft. Please keep the airspace clear around wildfires. This includes private planes, drones, and recreational air sports. As I close, I know that the wildfire activity we are seeing in British Columbia is extremely challenging for people and communities. It's obviously incredibly stressful living day to day with smoke or near a fire or being on an evacuation alert or order. And I think all of us have heard some of those stories in the last few days. I want British Columbians to know we are working hard to tackle wildfires and ensure communities have the supports they need. And as always, our number one focus is on keeping people safe. Thank you.
We now have time for questions. I think you have my list of folks there. That's all right. Give us a second. There we go. We have available experts available for questions as well. Ian Cunnings, Senior Director of Regional Operations with the Ministry of Emergency Management Climate Readiness. We have David Greer, Executive Director of the BC Wildfire Service, and Darrell Gunn, Executive Director of Highways and Regional Services with the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure.
Thank you, Minister. As a reminder for reporters on the phone, please press *1 to enter the queue. That's *1 to ask a question. For media in the room, please line up at the microphone provided and wait to be called. Please make sure to provide your full name and outlet. Media will be limited to one question and one follow-up. We're going to begin in the room. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Yann Lacoste, Radio-Canada, CBC. I'm not sure who's best qualified to answer this one, but it's a question for some colleagues. I'm wondering how the alert system works for the cell phones with the fires, how those messages are sent out. Although it was in Alberta, some tourists, for example, in Jasper said they never received notices. So we're just wondering how that system works in BC.
So British Columbia does issue broadcast intrusive alerts. It is we use the same national system that all of the provinces use. Different alerts for different types of hazards are issued by different entities. So, for instance, for amber alerts and like active shootings, that is issued by the RCMP. Federal government issues alerts around extreme storms and tornadoes. The province will issue alerts around tsunamis and evacuations due to wildfires and floods. We are also working with the federal government on early earthquake warnings, which will be issued in the same way. They are pushed out to your cell phone, to radios, and through to television broadcasts as well. Here in British Columbia, we take our cues from local communities as to whether or not they would like those broadcast intrusive alerts to be issued on behalf of the community. Depending on the community and the terrain, broadcast intrusive alerts can be very useful, but they are often not the only method that we use to alert evacuees of emergencies and evacuation orders.
And did you have a follow-up?
No.
For our next question, we're going to stay in the room. Please go ahead.
Hi, it's Penny Dafflos from CTV News. Some of the Jasper evacuees were turned away when they got to Kamloops because it was full up. There were already a number of BC evacuees there. So do we have enough evacuation centers right now for the people who are being forced from their homes within our province?
So we are constantly working with communities to prepare for the potential evacuations in their communities. As you heard, we have about 7,000, that came down recently. We have just under 5,000 people on evacuation alert. We currently have about 550 people on evacuation order. Evacuation supports can be provided through a number of methods. In terms of working with communities, we often work with communities to establish accommodation providers so that if evacuees require accommodation, they can go to an emergency reception center and be referred directly into an accommodation provider, an accommodation from there, and have that covered by the province. We also made substantial improvements to our emergency support services program, including the new $200 per night accommodation allowance. This can be provided to people through e-transfer, either by request at a reception center or in those communities I listed previously. We've activated the self-service option, which means that evacuees can actually access those e-transfers. So that's $200 per night for accommodation, plus potentially per diems and money for incidentals, depending on the needs of the family. They can potentially access those supports without ever going to a host community. We made these changes due to lessons learned from the 2023 wildfire situation, particularly what we experienced in central Okanagan. And by providing the $200 per night accommodation option, it allows for people to make their own choices as to where they go to spend the night or the nights that they are evacuated. It means that they can go to family and friends, they could go to a campsite, they can go to a community that is not a host community. It allows for evacuees to actually spread out further than they have been before under our previous program, which focused only on referrals into accommodations.
Did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, it's from Minister Ralston. I just wanted to get a better sense of you of kind of where we're at in the fire season right now. I know we kind of had an early start and then we had some cooler, wet weather. So I'm just hoping that you can kind of put this into context. And I also know that there's some outstanding requests to CIFC, or at least there were yesterday, for more resources. So are we kind of managing things right now? Do we need more help? Just if you could kind of give us the big picture.
Well, we had a different start to the season this year than last year. Last year, 2023, was a record season, and so the start was more intense. We had this year rain in June, and that slowed things down in a good way. But we're back up at a certain level of intensity, as we've noted, and I think the prospects in the immediate. It's always very difficult to make predictions, and I'm not a professional meteorologist, so I wouldn't presume to do that. But in the next couple of days, certainly in the north, it will be cooler, but the south of Prince George will continue hot and dry. So I think we're doing well in terms of our response. Many of the additions that we made to the wildfire service, whether it's more equipment, planes and helicopters, whether it's expanding the recruiting process and putting more full-time people in place to make the preparations, more initial attack crews, and a broader number of people trained, particularly not only in the bigger centers, but in more remote rural settings, Indigenous communities and smaller remote communities as well. So we've added to the personnel. And I think the response has been to the fires has been good so far. One hesitates to because there's always the unpredictability and uncertainty of wildfire. But so far, I think we're on track to contain and control the wildfires that crop up. But when you get the number of lightning strikes that we're getting and which ignite new fires, it's always it's important to be alert and to be prepared. And I think we've taken some of the major steps that are important to be prepared this season.
We have one more question in the room. Please go ahead.
Yeah, this is Cecilia Hua from City News Vancouver for Minister Ma. I spoke with the mayor of Bowinn Ma yesterday. They received about over 3,000 evacuees from Jasper, and for a village of just 1,000 people, that was very unexpected, and they were sort of saturated with their resources, but they still welcome people into their homes. I was just wondering if there's protocols on these last-minute evacuations in small towns opening up. How are they supposed to turn people away if they're overcrowded, or will they be compensated for all the resources they used?
Yeah, I want to start by saying out providing. I want to thank Mayor Owen Torgerson in particular for calling me late Monday evening about this issue. Actually, him and his community took such incredible initiative when it came to supporting evacuees from Jasper. As soon as we heard about the evacuation, and we heard about the evacuation from Jasper shortly after 9 p.m. Through the platform formerly known as Twitter, we were in immediate contact with our counterparts in Alberta, asking them how we can support them in the coordination of their evacuees. Mayor Owen Torgerson also contacted me directly and expressed his desire to stand up his emergency operations center. I communicated to him that he could do so and that we would certainly cover those costs. And he went to work. Just incredible leadership from the mayor, incredible leadership from that community. And yes, absolutely, the province is there to support incremental costs on a variety of emergencies. And this is one type of emergency that we do support. local communities on.
Do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I just wonder if you could clarify the areas that are currently under evacuation order and the areas that are under evacuation alert.
So we currently have 19 evacuation orders in place here in British Columbia and 30 evacuation alerts. Instead of listing all of them out for you, I'll note that the areas of particular concern for us are around Antler Creek wildfire, which is the area, the wildfire that is impacting the district of Wells and Barkerville. So evacuations are in place. Pardon me. Let me take a moment because I'm stumbling over my words here. Evacuations have taken place due to the Antler Creek wildfire. Those evacuation orders continue to be in place. We also have evacuation orders due to the Shetland Creek wildfire. That's the wildfire that is south of Ashcroft, impacting communities like Cooks Ferry Indian Band, Oregon Jack Indian Band, the Thompson-Nicola Regional District, and Ashcroft. We have impacts due to Alwyn Creek fire. We have a number of others. I'm going to check in with Ian Cunnings because he probably has a list right in front of him, actually, and rather than me trying to go off my memory, he can fill in some of those gaps.
Yes, Minister. The order info that I have, Fort Nelson First Nation still have an order, District of Wells, Regional District of Fraser Fort George, Caribou Regional District have 4 orders within that regional district. Regional District of Bulkley Nechako, Cooks Ferry Indian Band, Thompson-Nicola Regional District, Regional District of North Okanagan, Village of Ashcroft, Regional District of Central Kootenay has 3 orders in place, Regional District of East Kootenay, District of Logan Lake, the Hoots Dene Nation, apologies for the pronunciation there, and that's the list that I have at this time, Minister.
Thank you so much, Ian. All evacuation alerts and orders are amplified on emergencyinfobc.ca, so you can take a look at that website as well.
Thank you. We're going to go to the phones next. Our first question on the phones is Katie DeRosa, CBC. Please go ahead.
Hi, Minister. I'm just wondering if you could give sort of an overall assessment of how this fire season is comparing to last year, which we know was obviously particularly bad. But how are we doing so far, and what are you anticipating in terms of how bad it could get if conditions worsen?
So maybe I'll start and then I'll check in with David Greer of the BC Wildfire Service to follow that. 2023 was a record-breaking wildfire season for a number of reasons. We saw nearly 2.85 million hectares of landscape burned in that season alone, nearly 50,000 evacuees that year as well. In comparison to 2023, we are nowhere near those numbers. However, for those individuals who are evacuated, the impacts are equally as harrowing when you are away from your home and you do not know whether your home and all of your prized possessions and your memories have survived after building this community with your lives. It's an absolutely harrowing experience. So I do not want to diminish that experience for evacuees. It is the case that our evacuation numbers right now are much are manageable for us, but that can change very quickly, which is why we continue to work closely with communities, continue to work around the clock on pre-planning for potential evacuations. David, did you want to comment a bit on the wildfire situation there?
Yeah, thanks, Minister. Yeah, the season's a bit different from last year. just in terms of the weather. We got some positive spring weather this year in the middle with some sort of seasonal rains, which made a big difference for us in the case that it gave us, our crews, a chance to reset. So we did start early up north, which is typical. We didn't have the activity we did last year with massive Donnie Creek fire. We had the spring rains, but it has dried out quickly. But we've been able to get on the fires a little faster this year because of that. So that's the main difference. And I think you covered the numbers really well about the amount burnt and the number of fires. So we're not out of the season yet, so we'll see what happens. But even the cooling trend that's coming will again help us have a little bit of a pause, reset, and get ready to go again. So I'm pretty happy with the way things are going so far.
Katie, did you?
Yes, you mentioned, tourists are still able to travel, but obviously with, perhaps some hotels in small communities that could be, used by evacuees, is there almost a tension there between, I guess, what's the messaging that the province should be giving to people from out of province or even within the province around whether or not they should be traveling to a community impacted by a wildfire, and how you can set out that messaging when conditions are changing so quickly?
British Columbia is a beautiful province. It is a beautiful province to travel, to visit. We have a strong tourism sector here that is eager to welcome travelers from across British Columbia, across Canada, from all over the world. It is also a very large province with many very safe areas to visit. However, when you're traveling in British Columbia, we ask you to be safe and to be aware of the impacted communities. And that's why all travelers should visit emergencyinfobc.ca and drivebc.ca to get the latest status, latest situation, status updates on situations in communities. Now, learning from the 2023 wildfire season, when the central Okanagan was faced with tens of thousands of evacuees in a very short period of time, and tens of thousands more evacuees on evacuation alert. If you recall, in that year, we did have to declare a provincial state of emergency in order to issue a emergency order that restricted travel into that area for non-essential purposes. And now, the impact of those kinds of travel orders is substantial. We made the decision on the best information available, but it is also incumbent on us to learn from it and ensure that we are better prepared for future scenarios of that type. And so some of the improvements that we have made to emergency support services includes the new $200 per night accommodation allowance. It provides evacuees for greater flexibility as to how they find accommodations during mass evacuations. And so while evacuees can still visit host communities and access accommodations by referral in those host communities during an mass evacuation, when we turn on the self-service option, evacuees are also able to receive that financial support digitally through e-transfer without visiting a host community. That means that they can go basically anywhere. They can go to family and friends in a different part of the province. They can find hotels in different parts of the province. They can visit, stay at a campsite. They can fuel up their RVs and use that as an accommodations. They can even travel to other provinces. And so that improvement is a substantial increase in flexibility for evacuees to be able to make choices about how they support themselves and their families during evacuations.
Our next question is Tommy Osborne, CKPG News. Please go ahead.
Hi, this question is for Darrell Gunn.
Okay, Darrell.
And my question is, we spoke to a local trucking and transportation company that has expressed concerns about the highway closures just towards the local economy, towards this business. I was wondering if the Ministry of Transportation, if this was something on the top of mind for them, or if it's something they're monitoring at all.
Yes, absolutely. And so the highway closures, we coordinate with BC Wildfire Services, Emergency Management, Climate Readiness, and our other partners. I think regarding specifically to the Jasper case, with supplies coming in through Alberta, was the closure on the Alberta side, and of course we've closed on the BC side of Highway 16. So supplies coming from Alberta will have to take alternate routes. So we did hear from that there were some supply challenges, but it sounds like those supplies, whether it's fuel, groceries, are getting to those communities. So it is something that we certainly recognize and don't take lightly. But the closures do happen, and are coordinated with BC Wildfire Services. We do put all the information on Dry BC, so up-to-date information on detours and the closures are available, so those alternate routes can be used.
And Tommy, follow up.
Thank you. No, that's everything. Thank you very much.
For our next question, we're going to go to Josh Dawson, Castanet. Please go ahead.
One thing we've been kind of hearing a little bit about in the Kamloops Fire Center is the use of helicopters with night vision to conduct operations overnight. Just curious if someone, probably from BC Wildfire, could give us an overview of how that technology is being used, for what kind of operations, and if there's any plans to expand the use of that technology.
Did you want to take this?
Let me just make a couple of comments, and then I'll turn it over to the person from BC Wildfire Service. One of the aspects of the Premier's task force was to focus on better use and enhanced use of emerging technologies. So one of those is our predictive technologies, to be able to better predict when a wildfire is going to break out, where it would break out, because wildfires generate a tremendous amount of data, and of course in a data-rich environment that can be used creatively by advanced technologies. In terms of fighting fire, the night vision option has been activated on a couple of helicopters for lifting water and bucketing after sunset. But I'll turn it over to David Greer, and he can probably tell you a little bit more about the detail of that operation.
Yeah, thanks, Minister, and thanks for the question. And yes, we are using night vision technology on the Shetland wildfire. We're using it right now for reconnaissance and to also help our night crews to indicate where there may be some spot fires burning close to guards, so that our crews that are working through the night can find them. We'll start to do more bucketing and tanking, putting water on fires through July and August. So yeah, we've been using that for a while now, and it's been very helpful, especially for the safety of our crews, to indicate where there may be some problem areas when they're working at night. So thanks.
And I guess the other obvious part of that is if you're able to extend the hours of operation to put out fires, then you're more likely to be able to extinguish big fires faster. And so it's an advantage all around. Thank you.
Josh, did you have a follow-up?
No follow-up. Thank you very much.
Question is for Zhao Zhu, Globe Mail. Please go ahead.
Oh, thanks. Minister Ma, earlier this week, you noted that BC does not have the capacity to take in thousands of evacuees from Jasper, and that BC's aim was to provide them safe passage so they could be returned to Alberta. Does it mean that they're only welcome to stay in BC temporarily? And also just wanted to ask for clarification for a question that was mentioned earlier. So if an evacuee from Jasper asks for accommodation at a BC reception center, will they be turned away?
So British Columbians will always help our neighbors in times of crisis. When we learned about the evacuation taking place in Jasper, and in particular learned that the only safe route for evacuees from Jasper was west along Highway 16 into British Columbia, we immediately reached out to our counterparts in Alberta to ask how we could support them in their coordination of these evacuees. they had anticipated the number of evacuees leaving Jasper to be between 20 to 25,000 in very short order. And being mindful of the wildfire situation that was here, taking place here in British Columbia, they made the determination that they could best support their evacuees in Calgary through evacuee centers in Calgary, in Grand Prairie, and in Edmonton, and had asked us to facilitate safe passage for those evacuees. And so that was what we have done. Incredible support and like a swell of support from local communities. Incredibly grateful for British Columbians across both of those evacuation routes for everything that they have done to ease this journey for our neighbors from the east.
Zhao, did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, just wondering that if has this happened before between provinces, that one province has to turn away evacuees from others?
So just to be absolutely clear, Alberta is the lead on coordinating these evacuees, and they had made the determination that they would be best able to support them in evacuation centers in Grand Prairie, in Calgary, and in Edmonton. Their request of British Columbia, as they were the lead and we were supporting them in this, was to facilitate safe passage through the province. I am not aware of any requests that Alberta made of British Columbia that we have declined.
Our next question is for Abigail Popple, Rocky Mountain Goat News. Please go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Yes, I have a question for Minister Ma. Thank you for your support of Vail Mount, first of all. But I am also aware of some other similar small communities in the Robson Valley who say they were unable to activate their emergency operations centers because they were already overwhelmed with their own evacuation alerts. I'm wondering if the province is looking at bolstering their logistical and financial support for these other small communities who were unable to take in evacuees because of their own emergency management. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that was, the evacuation from Jasper traveled through British Columbia, through many communities that were already experiencing challenges due to wildfire in their areas. And this was part of the reason why the government of Alberta determined that they were better able to support the 25,000 evacuees coming out of Jasper if those evacuees were turned to Alberta as quickly as possible. Now, working with communities during emergencies, province provides financial support for activating emergency operations centers for a number of hazards, from wildfires to floods to extreme heat to extreme cold. We staff our ministry 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year to monitor and respond to requests for support from communities. That being said, what we have been seeing in recent years is that with climate change, the frequency and scope and scale of emergencies that communities are experiencing is increasing. They are oftentimes tackling a new emergency while still recovering from a previous emergency. And that is an incredible challenge for communities, particularly for smaller communities. And so a lot of the work that we are doing as a ministry and as a government is to put more emphasis on better preparedness and better mitigation of the impacts of emergencies and disasters before they happen. We know that every dollar spent in mitigation can save $10 or more in response costs during a disaster. And so that preparedness and that mitigation work is absolutely underway. There are conversations, and we have been hearing this from communities, particularly Indigenous communities, that there is a growing need for almost a year-round emergency response and emergency management capacity. So these are certainly directions, I think, that not just this province has to go, but every province across Canada and likely the entire world as a result of the climate emergency.
Abigail, did you have a follow-up?
No, just thank you for answering.
We have time for one more question today. Our final question will go to Brianna Charlebois, Canadian Press. Please go ahead.
Great, thank you so much. I was just wondering if you guys have any more details on the structures that were lost, specifically in the Shetland Creek fire, but if there's any other ones. I know that it said there have been 6 primary residence lost and maybe 20 other buildings. I'm just sort of wondering if you have any additional details you could share about that.
Yeah, at this time, the primary focus is to get out of control, wildfires under control, and return those communities to a safe place. Until that happens, we won't be able to assess damage in detail, and so I don't have additional details for you on that yet.
Brianna, did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you so much. Okay, so that still remains the number then in the province. And then I'm wondering also, I am curious about, I think what Minister Ralston suggested earlier about how the lightning strikes are actually calculated. Any insight into that would actually be great. Thanks so much.
Sure. Just want to clarify previously, the province hasn't released any numbers in terms of structural losses. We do work with local communities to assess the damage in their communities following a disaster, and we haven't been able to get to that point yet. If the communities are releasing information, that is their prerogative to do. The province has not released any formal numbers on structural losses at this time. Over to you.
It's an interesting calculation, and I'm going to turn it over to David Greer or whoever else is able to assist him in explaining just how that number of lightning strikes is arrived at, because it is a very impressive number.
Yeah, so thanks for the question. We have what's called sort of a lightning locator, and it's done through the Canadian Lightning Detection Network, provided by Environment Canada. So to get technical on you, the system consists of a network of direction finders that provide coverage of the province, so it envelops the province, and each direction finder consists of antennas and computers that detect electromagnetic pulses generated by a lightning strike. So all the lightning data from the sensors is processed and the exact location of the strikes are determined. And then a web-based system allows our staff to view the mapped lightning strikes within minutes of their occurrence, and this coordinates dates and time of each strike. And then in the morning, if it happens at night or, at the time, we'll send some spotter planes going out to check to see if those have actually ignited fires. We'll keep track of them and we'll mark them for crews, and we'll take GPS readings of them and send crews out to check to see if that in fact ignited a fire. And quite often the public will also alert us to those fires. And I just take this opportunity to thank the public for all the reports that come in to our call center about fires. That's been a really big help. And I'd also, if I could, take this time to acknowledge all the community folks that have worked on fires. I heard out of Burton some great collaboration between community members and BC Wildfire. So just to let you know that you are seen and we thank you.
See, I told you it would be an interesting answer. So, and it is significant because at this time of year, the majority of fires are started by lightning. So that's the reason for keeping track, as David just said. So thank you.
That's all the questions we have for today. Thank you, everybody.